Hi everyone, welcome to one of two Q&As for SAAFF's opening night spotlight program, the no good, very bad, terrible, longest, worst year 2020 COVID short. On behalf of Seattle Asian American Film Festival, I would like to welcome the filmmakers who are here with us today. Andy Wong, director of Day 60, Mireia Vilanova and Windsor Wong, co-directors of First We Eat. Frohne, director of As Close as You Can Get, Athena, director of Hey You, and Corinne Chin, who directed Pike Places, Among Flower Farmers, Generations of Resilience, and The Uprising. Thank you so much to all of you for sharing your films with us and joining us for this conversation. And I would like to go around and have you introduce yourselves, where you're joining us from, and what got you into making the film that you showed with us today.
Hi everyone, I'm Windsor, and I'm joining you all from my quarantine hotel in China as I'm just traveled home. Mireia and I co-directed the short called First We Eat, which is, a short documentary about the Chinese LA community, the Chinese community in LA under, the COVID times. And, obviously 2020 has been a very strange year. And, it's a year that makes you kind of feel powerless in some ways. So I think as filmmakers, as producers and occasional directors, I think the first thing we thought of was to, pick up our camera and to capture this moment. So that's how we came up with the idea of making this short.
And I feel like Windsor has already elaborated this enough, so I'm only going to be adding that I'm joining from LA, and Windsor is usually based in LA as well.
Great. How about Athena?
Hello, I'm joining from Vancouver. I made this film is really because actually someone in France reached out to me. They wanted to make a charity anthology film. So everyone pitch in their own resources and try to make a short film. And at the end of the day, they're gonna put all the films together and hopefully, hopefully people will donate to watch it so then they can donate the money to the hospital. I wasn't gonna take on because I wasn't sure, because that was like in June and I wasn't sure if I was able to do it. And but I was like, I want to make something. So I just came up with some ideas that's kind of based on being alone at home, and then and we did it. It was kind of crazy, but it was fun.
I'm in Seattle, and I am a staff video journalist at the Seattle Times. And so the story that I worked on was part of our coverage last spring when the pandemic first started. And I got connected with the Wynn family just through a Facebook post that sort of told their story, and had the privilege of them entrusting me to sort of share their father's story and their family's story along the way. And it was a really sad and tragic thing, but they were really, it was really important to them to get their story out, especially when there was so little known about how this whole pandemic was going to unfold.
Hi, my name is Corinne. I'm also here in Seattle. I'm also a video journalist at the Seattle Times on our very small but mighty team. And Lauren and I worked together on The Uprising, which is a film that, we worked on as part of our daily work. When the protests started after the killing of George Floyd, we saw a lot of coverage that was really breaking news oriented. And we really wanted to bring people very personal stories and the reason why people are on the streets. We saw a lot of looting and rioting narratives, and we really wanted to do something different. So that's The Uprising. And we also, we cover a lot of news stories. And so Cultivating Resilience in a Pandemic, I actually don't know the title that I gave you, but it's about Seattle's Hmong flower farmers. And that was one of the first things that I thought of when all the lockdowns started during the pandemic, because I grew up the daughter of immigrants who ran a small business, and I know how small those margins are. So the first thing I thought was, how are some of these communities dealing with this? And I think one thing that really struck me was was the resilience and how resilient, generational resilience gets passed on throughout the years.
Hey, I'm Andy. I'm from Vancouver, British Columbia, and this idea came from an actor friend of mine who was very affected by the news cycles that was coming out about the racist attacks against the Asian community, and to the point where she was afraid to go outside. And so at the same time, she was like itching to like start on another project just to keep her sanity a little bit. So we decided to take on this project, filming like socially distanced and everything. And she was very happy with it. So that made me feel really good.
Yeah, when it came to filming during the pandemic, what was it like for all of you on your different sets or filming on the ground? Would anyone like to go first?
I can jump in on this one first. So our production was just me and her, and we basically said like, we filmed at her house. So we basically said like she would handle anything that was like location or set deck related, as well as be in front of the camera. And then I would do anything technical in terms of like handling the camera and anything like that. And anytime we had to shoot a shot, like a close-up, we would be using longer lenses, so we would still be socially distanced. And anytime we weren't able to do that, I would basically like roll the camera, run away, and have her like walk by the camera, for example. It was a fun process.
Yeah, it was kind of interesting because we were trying to, because ours is like it was like a different location. We still have to scout, but we end up like choosing. So me and the DP, we end up choosing a empty house that his family has, and we were just able to ask like 6 other friends to join us. Including including cast and crew. In total, there's like 8 of us, and everyone have to wear masks. And we made sure that all the food and everything was like pre-packaged and everything. And yeah, we really tried to keep a distance between all of us. It was kind of challenging because like, even though the film itself is only one character in one location, but we still need a lot of empower. Like it was like literally our makeup artist, she's like amazing. She would be doing lighting, also have to check the makeup and all at the same time. So yeah, but it was still really, really fun. There's like different challenges that we go through.
If I can add on to it, I would say the similarity we all shared probably was keeping a very, small, tight crew, shooting under the pandemic, but also specifically in our case, as our documentary, focuses on a restaurant, it was a privilege for us to be able to film there and to have the trust of, our friend who actually is the owner of the restaurant and also the subject, one of our subjects in the documentary, have that trust in us, because obviously being a restaurant owner and running that restaurant, they were adhering very strictly to all the protocols and whatnot. So we were just being very careful and following the same rules and social distancing and everything. But I think it was crucial for them, and also for our other subject, who's let us into her home and to film in a safe way. So we were very, very, very lucky to have their trust. Yeah.
And also, as a very, very small crew, that's basically how Windsor and I ended up directing this documentary short, because we're usually producers, but we just wanted to keep the crew as small as possible. And so we just went for it. And it was a very interesting experience.
I'll just add, similarly to everyone else's experience, but also, I mean, filming as close as you can get, it was, I first connected with the family in mid-March. And so there weren't any protocols really established here. People weren't even wearing masks at that point widely. And for me, it's like usually every, most days or weeks of my job, I'm like out filming, and it was just like, how do I operate under these circumstances? Usually I would spend a lot of time in people's homes and like get to know them. And in this case, like Vince, who was the central character, telling his family's story, like I never came within 20 feet of him. And we did the interview, a very emotional interview over Zoom, which like I had never done as like a deep emotional interview with someone without being in the same room with them. So that was pretty strange. And then, just trying to find opportunities to create that same sense of intimacy you would get in a character-driven documentary. So like filming through their front window while they're praying with their family over Zoom, and creating that sense of like we're in the home with them, but like we never were. That was all very tough. And then also just making use of, like, the family had footage from like the hospital where their father was, and so like trying to incorporate that seamlessly into the storyline as well, because that was like a place I couldn't go, and it's actually a place most of the family couldn't go either. Only two of them could. So yeah, it was kind of like a lot of problem solving to tell the story as deeply as we would, at any typical time. A lot of adapting.
And I think similarly to Lauren, when I was filming with the flower farmers, it was March, a little bit of April. We had no idea about this virus. I mean, everyone was in lockdown. We, at the Seattle Times, we were carrying these letters around with us as we were driving around, just to tell people we were essential workers and we were permitted to be out on the road. And so it was a really uncertain time. We didn't know, we weren't wearing masks yet, but because we were working with elders in the Hmong community, Erica Schultz, who's a still photographer at the Seattle Times, we worked on the story together and we wrote the text story that appeared in the paper together. But we made that decision even before, the rest of the world was wearing masks, that we were dealing with elders where we have to get our hands on masks somehow, first of all, and we have to wear them when we're reporting. And for interviews, I used a boom pole so that we could still distance 6 feet. So I was holding the boom pole and operating the cameras and doing the interview at the same time. It was really a lot to juggle, but we made it work, because I think primarily as community storytellers, our priority is definitely people's safety. And because we work with other people, we're working on sometimes multiple stories at once. It's just really important to us on staff to keep safe protocols.
Yeah, thank you all for sharing. For like Andy, Windsor, Mireia, Athena, can you tell us like around when last year you were filming?
We filmed, I believe, in July, or end of July, early August, I think, which was already pretty deep into the quarantine and the pandemic. And I think, it was our motivation after that, at least personally, it was partly driven by all the frustration that I was feeling at the time, having gone so deep into months into really the quarantine and staying from home and all of that. So it was, it was an interesting time to be filming for sure.
Yeah, no, thankfully by the time that we shot, things were still also pretty bad, but at least there were already some protocols, and we had already worked on other productions during the pandemic, and we already knew how to make this safer than we would have had we shot in May, when it was actually impossible because Film LA wasn't giving any permits or anything.
We filmed sometime around May or June, basically 60-ish days after the initial lockdown.
I think we did it beginning of July, like around there. So yeah, same. We were in pretty much everyone's locked down, no productions was really doing. So yeah, we were just trying to keep everyone safe, let everyone know everything beforehand, and let everyone know what's happening, what's gonna be happening, so they feel safe to come on board with us.
Yeah, I was able to work on a short in July, and it was around then that they like brought on having to have a COVID compliance officer, and I'm glad we have those kinds of protocols now. Next question, looking back at your experiences filming these shorts, what were your biggest takeaways from the experience, or what was the most memorable parts of filming what you were filming? should I call on someone? How about Athena?
Sorry, you mean from the film that?
Yeah, like what was your biggest, takeaway from the whole experience of making a film during the pandemic?
Yeah, I mean, I always knew this, but there's just definitely making a film is not like it takes a village to make a film. I mean, I always knew this, but like it's not until this time I realized like how how challenging it was. But it was, I think for me, it was actually kind of touching because like these friends, they were on board and they really, really try to help. Everyone just took on so many roles. And these are the friends who are like really, really passionate about filmmaking, that they're willing to go there so much. Every time after a film shoot, I feel like I'm so glad to have friends. Like I'm so glad they're still with me. So I feel like that's what really made this film memorable, is really the experience of working with close friends and how to like figure out everyone problem solving every day, like trying to figure out how do we do this with like the amount of people we have. Yeah.
I would say the message within the film that is the central to our story, as our title "First We Eat" indicates, is just the importance to hang on to the most basic stuff in our life, and the base needs and the things that we used to be able to take for granted, like before the pandemic, like having a meal with your family or going out to eat. And I think culturally, I always think, being Chinese, I always think food is so important to us as a people, and I think the pandemic at least has made me think that's truer than before, because I wouldn't have gotten through it without being able to have like some sort of hometown food throughout the pandemic, throughout all this time that I was quarantined at home. So like to have that normalcy, to have a sense of the most basic things that are safe, that you're still safe, and you're able to have, that is so important. And outside of the film itself, I think to me is the importance of telling our stories, to capture our story, capture this moment on camera, and there's value in that. It's therapeutic, and also hopefully it will serve as some sort of record in the future when we look back at this moment.
Mine would be how fun and creative you can get when you set limitations for yourself as a filmmaker, and especially in this situation where like the limitations are forced on you. It can be a real challenge, but it can be real fun.
I'll add that, I mean, working on the story about the Wynn family, it was, it's an incredibly sad story, and I think for me, I think what stuck, very early on, because we continued to cover the pandemic and make short docs about a lot of different things, but like, their family was just so open to sharing this like totally like this tragedy, and they wanted to share it so that they might have some impact on how people dealt with the pandemic, if people could see what their family had gone through and like understand what it was like to be there and go through it with them. It's like I still like it's like an edit that I just like cried through basically, and I like cry every time I watch it, because it's just, I think they're just such an incredible family, and I'm still in disbelief that they shared so much of us during such a terrible time for them. And then on the flip side with the Uprising, I think the most memorable part for that is going from super isolated shoots and stories like as close as you can get, and then suddenly being plopped in the midst of thousands of people, like in the middle of a pandemic. It was like so different, and a whole different level of like anxieties and logistics to navigate beyond just the filming and producing and all of that. Like the filmmaking part of it is like, how do I exist in these large groups of people? So I remember that feeling like really just like so jarring to go from like such isolation to like huge amounts of people in like a day. It just switched.
Yeah, and my experience working on that with you, Lauren, was we were so isolated for what felt like a long time, and what we realize now was not a long time, but it felt like a really long time. We were in total isolation and you know, very strict lockdowns, and then all of a sudden thousands and thousands and thousands of people are on the street. And I think really, and in a lot of dangerous situations, you know, obviously COVID wise and pandemic wise, but also situational awareness. You know, at one point when we were filming for that, a car drove into a crowd of protesters, and we didn't know what was going to happen. And a man was shot. So, you know, really, really leaning on each other for that, and being able to lean on other filmmakers that I knew I could really trust with the story and with my personal safety was really important, and definitely an experience that I'll carry with me for the rest of my life. And I think on top of that, another thing that was really memorable for me was actually when the films were published, and when we got you know, feedback from our audiences. And it really highlighted for me the importance of making sure we represent underrepresented voices in these really, really difficult times, because there's so much media coming out all around us, and all of our lives are lived with online video and Zooms, and it's so easy for these stories to fall through the cracks. So I think it's so important for all of us to continue telling these stories.
Yes, absolutely. And I'm glad you all were able to creatively come together within your teams and safely make, or as safely as you could, make all of these films that we're able to share with everybody. We have time for one more question for everyone, which is like, how have you adapted creatively during the pandemic? Like, are you creating more, or have you picked up new hobbies? And do you have any new projects coming out following this?
Um, I've before the pandemic, I produced a few shorts that we ended up like finishing throughout the pandemic. So I've got 2 or 3 short films that are finishing up, and should be like going into festivals in the upcoming year. And then also I've been practicing pitching, and I've been pitching to different like grants for the last 3 months, which has been a really good experience, because like before the pandemic, I haven't done that before.
I would say like during the pandemic, one of the first things is like, as Mireia mentioned, you know, it gave us the opportunities to try our hands at directing a documentary, which because we are mostly producers most of the times. But also I would say I feel personally very lucky to work in the documentary world, at least because my job with my last production company is in archival documentary. So it's actually sort of one of the least affected areas in our industry. So I was lucky to still be able to work. So you know, I know that can't be said for everyone in our industry. So you know, I just hope this is over soon, and you know, everybody can go out and be creative again, like without the restrictions, as fun as it is to try to improvise under it. But yeah, that's my feelings for the last whole year, because I felt personally very fortunate to be able to still work, because of the nature of the types of projects that I was working on.
Because of the pandemic, I feel like I have way more time to actually bond with my family. And I actually had a script that I was working on. It's based on my father and our family, and just how, like, what happened when we immigrate here. So actually get to spend a lot more time with my father was really nice. Not only I get to learn more about my family and my father, but also inspiration for my script. So yeah, that was really nice.
I think at the Seattle, I'll speak for Lauren and me, we have lots of projects coming up, but we don't know exactly what. It kind of depends on what happens, but we make a lot of short films at the Seattle Times, and not a lot of people know about it, but you can watch them at seattletimes.com/video. And the third member of our video team, Ramon Domper, also has films in the film festival this week. So be sure to check those out as well. But we're always on the lookout for story ideas, that are happening in the Seattle area. So please reach out to us if you have any.
And also, it was really nice that this block of films included a lot of narrative in addition to documentary, because for me, it was really fun and interesting and inspiring to see like how creative people got throughout the pandemic and through all the isolation. On our team, we deal with like a lot of news, and for most of the year, it was just like crushingly relentless, and it's all like a lot of really sad stuff. And so it's really nice to sort of step back and see what creativity has flowed out of it. There is like some good stuff that folks have been able to make through all of this. And for me, I think just creatively taking away like, that adapting to different scenarios and sort of broadening my idea of what my films can be beyond just something that I, film and edit in like a traditional sort of way, kind of making me think outside of the box. And I am still very anxious for things to get back to how they were, though.
And in my case, I feel like the pandemic has really been a creative time. And so that's been very unexpected, but great. I even became a COVID compliance officer in order to be able to shoot in a safe way. And so I'm really excited to have 2 more fiction short films that are premiering this month and next month, which are also set during the pandemic. And they're both set in restaurants, though different restaurants, which is a very big coincidence because now I have 3 projects set in restaurants during a pandemic. But I feel like it's a great testament of our time. And I feel like it's been a great opportunity to just adapt and scale back and make things, as small as possible, but as powerful as possible, and work a lot on screenplay and structure and what really matters when you're making any piece, either documentary or fiction.
Yeah, thank you everyone for sharing. I really hope this program brings, not only different stories into people's lives, but also some light and some hope from the different resilience that we see throughout our communities. Thank you so much to our audiences for joining the 9th annual Seattle Asian American Film Festival and watching this great COVID Shorts program with us. We really appreciate your support for the festival and our community. If you haven't already, please take a moment to fill out our festival participant survey. There's a link in your confirmation email. The data from the surveys help us get grants and sponsorships and make this festival possible. So it's another way that you can support SAAFF. Also, you should check out all of our other programs on seattleaaff.org. There's still plenty of tickets available. You don't want to miss out on some of our more limited programming too, so go check it out. On behalf of Seattle Asian American Film Festival, thank you, stay safe, and stay healthy.